right, this is Surviving Business. I am Winston Wilson and I'm here with David Wilson. We are so excited to talk to you all today. Hope you're doing great wherever you are. This show is because we, the two of us, believe in businesses as a force for the common good on this planet. We know that businesses have such an amazing effect on so many of us and so many lives. And so we talk a lot about businesses. Both of our backgrounds are in business, and we talk a lot about how businesses are doing well, how businesses can survive, how they can thrive. And so we said, why don't we have a show on this? Our first episode on video games was fantastic. We had a ton of fun associated with it. I think Dave, you'd agree it was just a blast to talk about something that we love with a passion. And this episode is about something else that we want to talk about, that we have a passion about, and that is around movie theaters. Now, every single person that's out there, there's probably a very few exceptions somewhere that have never been to a theater, but mostly everybody that at least that we've known has been in the movie theater at some point. There's an experience associated with going to a movie theater where you get the popcorn and you got the trailers and you've got the lights and the darkness and the camaraderie and the shared experience of a movie theater. And as we know, right now we're recording this in year 2 of the pandemic. It sounds bad to say that, but it's true. year 2 of the pandemic. And so movie theaters aren't the same. And we want to talk about how they can do to recover now. How can they recover in the future post-pandemic? But even before the pandemic, David, I think you'd agree that they were already struggling a little bit, and they were thinking about how they're going to survive then. So we're going to talk about the problem first. So that's what we'll do now. I'm going to turn it over to David in a second to kind of talk about that from his view. And then we're going to give more about our view, and then we're going to talk about some solutions. And then we're going to talk about the next episode. But before we do any of that, I've got an announcement for all of you that are out there. Every single person should have a business of some kind. So if you work somewhere, you love something. And so you should have a business associated with that. So here in Surviving Business, we want to help be part of that. So if you subscribe and put a comment, tell us what your business is. We are going to choose a business at least twice during each season to talk about their business and how to help their business be successful. That is such an amazing thing. And before I could even announce it today, we've got our first business that we'll be helping out. And this is a film production creative that will be helping them with putting their business together, helping them with marketing, and talking about all of that stuff right here on this channel. So if you've got a business and you say, you know what, I know what I'm doing, or I'm trying to know what I'm doing, but I don't know where to start, or I need help, you can get help right here on this channel. And all you got to do is subscribe and tell us what you do. And we will choose at random businesses that we'll do that for. We want to impart our gifts to everybody that's out there. So Dave, hopefully you guys heard that. Subscribe right now whenever you hear this and tell us what your business is. You don't have to write a lengthy, dissertation about what your business is. Just tell us what it is and how we can help you. And we will do that for you. So Dave, great to have you again for episode 2 of Surviving Business. Say what's up to people.
Yo, what up, folks? What's happening? Yo, so somebody try and put me on the line for this describing the problem, and then I always say, let's go back. Let's go back into the journey of time, right? To where we first, we're brothers. So where our first memories of movies are, right? Because I think that one of the things that he didn't mention was that movie theaters and, the experience of going to a movie, it kind of like has this thing where you remember certain things, right? Because it's a time where you go out and you're with somebody that's dear to you or that you hope will be dear to you at some point, right? Because date night was always a movie night, right? Movie and drinks. Well, not movies and drinks, movies and dinner.
I remember that 4D movie theater in Manhattan to watch that John Wick movie. And the whole time that was happening, I was saying to myself, what the hell is going on here? Why am I getting splashed with water? What is this wind going on? Why I'm on a roller coaster? Such a wild experience. But you can't forget that stuff ever.
You can't forget that stuff, right? So I can think back. One of the earliest movie experiences that I really remember was going to see E.T. on the same weekend that Rocky 3 came out. Right now, I had been to the movies before that, but this one stood out to me as just a memorable one because I remember we first went to go and see Rocky 3, and if you guys grew up in the era that I grew up in, or even in this era, you know, if you can do a 2-for-1 special, and especially if your mom brings you and your brother, and then your aunt comes with your cousin or your sisin, whatever we used to call around and you guys go and see a movie to catch a double feature is the extra bang, right? Because you know, and then the movies weren't that expensive either. It was actually an affordable thing.
Yeah.
So
Catching,
so we went.
catching a double feature was different though. Catching a double feature was us walking into the next door.
Yeah, just walking next door. So I was pretty. I think I was definitely the youngest because I am the youngest out of the crew. Um, and I remember us. We saw Rocky 3, and of course I loved Rocky 3. Right, it was just a great movie. Right, you can't get better than Rocky 3. And we go and like, let's go and see E.T. And they take me to this movie theater next door, and I see like this little creature. And I'm like, I don't want to see this. So you know, me being a gregarious 7-year-old or how old I was, somewhere around there, said, "Forget that. I'm not watching this." And I went back to watch Rocky 3 again.
Wow.
You know, and I like never saw ET until like I became an adult or something like that. Because I was just like,
I don't.
why are they taking
I,
me to see
I don't want
this?
to talk about ET, whether because there's lots of human beings that love it. However, I would have done what you would have done because
As I watched it as an adult, I thought E.T. was an amazing movie. But you know, as a little kid, and the funny thing is, E.T. was probably more geared towards
people of
older
your
kids.
age, yeah.
But
ET
I wasn't having any of
doesn't
that. I
make
remember.
any of my list, and Rocky doesn't either. Not necessarily, but at that time, I could see why you'd go and see that. If I remember, it was Rocky 3, if I remember.
Yeah, yeah, Rocky
Rocky,
3. That was with Mr. T.
yeah, yeah.
That was
So,
Mr. T. So you know, we got experiences like that all the way up to when I went to go when you took me. Well, it wasn't just you took me. This was like the neighborhood trip, you might as well say, because it was me and you and June. June is his best friend, and my best friend happens to be Kevin, which is my we're around the same age. So they finally took us out. This is when these guys are like in college and they're doing big things, and we're younger. So they finally took us out to a movie, and we were going to see a midnight movie. To see Batman, which was awesome. We're gonna go see a midnight movie. You gotta be kidding me. And one of the things that stood out about that experience was number one, the line to get into the movie. Right, there was a line wrapping around Green Acres Cinema. Like there was this long line you had to wait on to get to the point where you got checked for guns and stuff, and then you got to go and see the movie. But on this line, so much stuff happened that night, right? It wasn't the regular night of just being online, right? There was a girl that was interested in Kevin, and Kevin being bashful, little
Kevin
young
was
guy,
bashful.
whatever. Well, he was bashful at that point because he wasn't experienced enough to like really talk back to the girl the way that And then it's like all his big brothers there talking junk to him. But one of the things that really stood out, remember there was this car that was across the street from us, and it was a BMW. The funny thing is, back then BMWs weren't considered to be like the car to have. It was like you need to have like an old school car that you hooked up that had like a booming system in it that was probably worth like $1,000. Meanwhile, this guy was across the street with his drop top BM profiling, and nobody was really paying him any attention. But he had this song that was playing, and for everybody that loves hip hop and loves to hear and also as R&B, they would have been familiar with this song in like I guess it was like 1990, you know, and it's like this a cappella version that's just going and nobody's paying any attention to it, and the soul to soul, right? And all of a sudden, like the beat dropped on that song, and you saw the entire line stop all their conversation, turn to look, and they're like, "Oh!" And it was a party on the line for like a good minute, right?
Right. Back to
So
life. Back to life was the name of the song. Yeah, I remember.
back to life, right?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the movie. That has nothing to do with the movie. We haven't gotten into the cinema yet. You know, we're there to see Batman, and if you ask me to recite what happened in the movie Batman, I won't have a better recollection than what I have about the experience on that line getting into the movie theater.
There's one thing that you might, I don't know if you remember this part, but going back to business that I thought was interesting is that as we were on that long line that you described and listened to that booming system, there was a brother out there not too far from the line out there selling T-shirts on there that had the symbol of Black Batman, calling them Black Man. And people were buying his T-shirt and said Black Man on it. It had Batman's symbol on it. I was like, this dude had to put a lot of thought into his mind. Then like, yo, I'm gonna go make some T-shirts. I'm gonna come out here. I'm gonna sell them. And if I remember, by the time we were off of that line, I don't think he was there anymore. I think he sold all what he had
Oh,
in
he
his
sold
hand.
all the shirts. Yep, yep.
He sold the whole daggone thing. So
So,
go ahead.
so then that brings us to like, okay, how did movies move from, you know, having that same type of experience to, you know, where they were pre-pandemic, right? So pre-pandemic, it's not so much that you completely got rid of the line, right? Because if there was a big blockbuster movie that came out, there were still people that were like, "Yeah, I want to see this. I got to see this day one. I'm gonna go and see this," right? You still had movies that were breaking records, right, as far as sales. But when we look at the breaking of the record for sales, it's like, okay, is this really apples to apples, right? Because if you're gonna tell me, you know, that Batman movie that we were online for, you know, didn't gross as much as what, you know, Avengers Endgame was, I would say, yeah, I'm pretty sure it didn't, because when we look at the price for the movie ticket, the movies were probably like $4 or $5, maybe $6, man. You know, and now we're talking about $20 for a regular adult ticket, right? If not more, if you want to have a 3D experience or a 4D experience, like what Winston just mentioned earlier, right? So yeah, when the tickets become a lot more expensive, just generally, you're gonna see more income, right? So therefore, it's gonna look like, okay, you guys are still performing well. But when there's not a blockbuster that's like Avengers Endgame, you know, who's going out to go and see, you know, these other movies, right?
Well,
And that's what.
I will say that they did some good things, pre-pandemic that I thought were interesting. So they had the reservation system that
Yep,
I thought was great.
that's what I was gonna get to. Yep.
The $20 you mentioned was one thing.
Mm-hmm.
AMC had a movie kind of pass thing. We won't talk about the movie pass itself because that was obviously a disaster, but a
Mm-hmm.
deal because AMC capitalized on it. And I think that they understood the economics of it quite well. So even as we speak, I had some information that got lost in my most recent update of my system. But even as we speak, AMC is still getting money. They just recently got a $917 million infusion of cash from, I think, some venture capitalist folks and
Mm-hmm.
private equity people. So there are people out there who believe in movie theaters, that they're going to still be there.
And it wasn't only AMC; it was also Regal, right? Regal did a similar plan, right? So Regal Cinemas, and there were probably some other bigger cinemas that are out in the West Coast that probably followed Gambit with them, right? But what these moves kind of showed us was that the movie theaters, they realized that there was a threat out there that was bigger than, you know, what they were putting on, right? And not only was the threat uh, that they needed people in seats. It was that they had, well, that was what it was, right? We need more people in seats, and they realized that for AMC, if I allow for people to come, and they limited the amount of movies that you could really attend on that movie pass per week or something like that, and the same thing that AMC did. What they realized is that, okay, if we can get people to come in and they do the $20 or whatever, they're gonna, when they come to the movies, they're gonna buy stuff,
Yeah,
right?
I think they
And
understand that it's a shared experience that people like to go, and the margin is really in the concessions and all of those things.
yeah,
Um, that's a big thing that I think about, and I think this is one of the things that's been a challenge is that there's more screens. Every human being's got a screen now.
yep,
Everyone can watch a screen on their phone or whatever other thing they've got, their device, and they can watch a movie. Like every single person can watch a movie now. And even so, I'll talk about some of the things that we see with Time Warner and some of those other things. But that to me is a significant threat that they've got to think about in the future. And it's not like even 5 years ago where your phone was kind of one thing. The phones now can have Dolby Atmos in the phone, and they can sound phenomenal in the phone. The headphones sound great. You can have screens in your house all over the place. There are those kind of technological threats are one thing. So when I think about the shared experience you described earlier, that's their strength.
hmm
Getting up, getting people to go out and have an experience at the theater
yep.
and not
And,
commoditizing it just about their screens and what's on the screen.
and not to mention, even when we talk about screens, right? There was a time where a flat screen TV came out, and it was like, oh man, it's $3,000, $6,000. Flat screen TVs, you still can get a $3,000, $6,000 TV. It just, you might not be able to find anything that's ever going to make that, well, anything right now that will make
Far
that
ahead,
TV perform to its three thousand,
far
six
ahead of
thousand
the
dollars,
technology. Yeah,
right? But you can go and get a 65-inch TV or 75-inch TV under $1,000 that may have 4K capability
easily.
easily. And when we say 4K capability, most movie theaters are just touching on having 4K capability, right? So when we look at that and we say like, okay, I'm at home, and I remember, we can remember when home movie theaters, that was like an amazing thing for you to try and have in your house,
Oh
right?
my
You
God,
were like,
you can get a
oh,
tape and push the tape inside, and it plays a movie. Oh my God, that was like the biggest thing in the world. Well, you got to get a
you
tape,
know,
you got to rewind the tape, and then you got to get a forehead thing to make the tape sound better. Woohoo!
and
That
then
was
you and then came the advent of the actual receiver that you could hook it up, and you could have all of these, speakers behind you, right? And then they tried to come in with the LCD. I don't know if most of you people know what the LCD, that was the laser disc players that preceded the actual
TV
DVD,
and the
right? So
Blu-rays and all that. Yeah,
they were these big joints that were like the size of a record, and it was like if you had that, you thought that you were like really doing something that was amazing. The sad thing is that 10 years later, that went goodbye, right? And the
look,
DVDs even had a short lifetime.
now you don't need any of them. I have some DVDs, and I look at them. Some of them I've never opened, and I was like, why do I have these things? Because now you don't need. If you want the TV, if you and I want to go watch a movie right now, what do? We just go
Go.
on something, and then we just watching it. We just
Yep.
download it and stream it right now.
Yep. Yep.
We just seen
Yep.
it now.
Yeah,
So
I remember having an argument with one of my good friends about Blu-ray versus the
it was
HD.
Toshiba had a
Huh?
technology called HD DVD. Is what.
Yeah, versus the HD DVD, and he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Well, Blu-ray is whipping the HD DVD," because I was always like, the HD DVD was a better technological advantage. It had a better technological advantage for the times because DVDs were so big, 40 gigs of space, and you only use up like 11 or 7 on these movies, while the HD made it more affordable. Yeah, and then we were having this. He was like, "Yeah, Blu-ray's winning," and I'm like, "Well, Blu-ray's winning, but look at what we're looking at in the store right now. There's a hard drive of 500 gigs. Not to mention, we're starting to have streaming capability. I wouldn't be surprised if Blu-rays are gone in the next 10 years. And here we are. It's probably 9 years later, right? And buying a Blu-ray makes like really no sense.
It does. It doesn't. But sometimes you do that. But
Yep, you do.
yeah, you know,
And go on.
no, I was gonna say that with the advent of that technology, that's another headwind that the whole movie theater experience just hasn't really gotten to think about. So going back to your point about going to the movie theater itself, they have to retrofit every single one of their projectors to have HD or DVD or 4K or 8K ability to do so. Some of them have done it, like we go and see a Dolby movie with the family. That was great. Or what
Mm-hmm.
was the other one? IMAX. So
Yep.
it was those kind of things. But those were even more expensive than a regular thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but going back to the experience, I just keep thinking about a solution that says, how do they capture the wonder that you had when you went to go see Rocky 3? When you go and see that, I've seen some movies recently over the last few years where people would cosplay to the movies and they're like making their own experience up because they just want to have fun because there's some Star Wars or superhero movie that they want to do it. So they're coming out dressed like that just because they want to make that. Well, like, how does the movie theater itself create events like that to capitalize on that release, right? When that
Mm-hmm.
whatever superhero or science fiction movie comes out, why don't the movie theaters make it an event? Why do the people gotta make an event out of it on
Yeah.
their own? That could be such an amazing way of doing it, making almost like a mini convention at the daggone premiere of a thing. Because to me, human beings, there's going to be a boom of people wanting to go out and go to the movie theaters, in my opinion, post pandemic. The tricky part is like when is officially post. So
Yeah.
is post in September or is post in 2022? That's it. That's the post. That's the thing. I think.
Yeah, and that's why AMC needed that big infusion of cash, right? Because their money was getting pretty small, right? I mean, even when we look at small movie theaters, that maybe mom and pop owned, which were already having their struggles, most of them are going to be completely extinct by the time we come out of this, right? Because they don't have the cash to just be able to have this piece of property that's sitting here
With a
and not
4K projector.
generating any money.
Yeah.
And even when they were generating money, they were like barely able to stay open, barely able to stay open then.
That's right.
So, so when I look at it, I look at it and I say, there are just tons of problems that these guys have, right? Because when they do open up, and as you mentioned, there may be a flood of people that rush. There'll still be some people that are hesitant to go to the movie theater just because the experience of watching a movie with a mask on and what they're saying might be double mask going
They
forward.
might have to retrofit a lot of movie theaters.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, like you go to a movie theater, you got seats that are really close to each other. You might
yeah,
have to have plexi things in front of each other. I don't know, but that kind of is a weird shared experience if you go with your significant other, or you're taking somebody on a date. You go to the movie theater, you got a plexiglass in front of you and the person you're taking on a date. I don't know if that works, but it just
yeah.
might be something
I
to have to
mean,
think about.
since a lot of the movie theaters are moving to a reservation type of thing, maybe they can make that type of thing work. But I think that it's one of those things that's going to require a lot of cash, right? So they're cash strapped now, and then they're going to say, okay, well, we're going to put in plexiglass, which is expensive, especially if they're doing it by theater. And then also they've got to look at what does the airflow look like inside of a movie theater? How does it really move through? Do we need to change, this whole filtration system that we have,
Right. Yeah.
right? There are a lot of things that are at play that say, for them to be PPE ready or PPP ready, what do they have to do, right? Um,
Yeah.
what do they have to do to make sure that when someone comes into the movie theater, they're actually going to be safe? It's a dark place, right? Um, and in dark places,
People
there
are
were studies.
people are laughing, they're
Yep.
spewing, they're doing all of that kind of stuff in the theater.
Yeah, there were some studies that were done some years ago that I saw where movie theaters are like one of the grossest places period.
I don't think you see the sanitation you see in other places in the pandemic. I don't think that the movie theaters are prepared. They would have to hire a lot more people than what you see in a movie theater, where some guy just comes with a brush and just brushes up the popcorn with like
Yeah,
when it's over, and that's the only sanitation I've ever seen in a movie theater,
yeah,
and they're really good ones. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't see that.
I mean, for some of the newer theaters with big leather seats, when you pay like 30 something bucks,
I'm sure they clean those, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
yeah, I think they clean those a little bit. But we're talking about you gotta disinfect a little bit, right? So you also talk about even for screen time, they probably need to add like another 10 or 15 minutes, between each movie, so that they make sure that they're properly cleaning those rooms, right? And then, even line maintenance, when people are coming into the theater, figuring out exactly how you're going to keep people separate. There are a myriad of different technical things that
Yeah.
they'll work out just because they have to work them out.
How do they
But
do that? How do they test people? How do they know who's coming in, who has it, who's got vaccinated, who's not? That's a tricky thing to think about. I had this thought in my head. I think this goes back to our conversation in the episode around video games. So if you haven't seen that episode, please go see it. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful. And so you think about like focusing on businesses and or families. So say you and I, we get together, we got a bunch of people coming in and we're going to have a family reunion, right? That's like a, what you call that? What they did in the NBA? What do they call it? Quarantine zone? What do
yeah,
they call that?
quarantine zone.
Like a capsule. And you got
Hmm.
those people and you know that they're all here and they're doing that. Trying to find out who's doing specialized events for families or groups of people that we can focus in on, that we know that they've already gone through some kind of protocol before we get in there. Um, so
So we moved to solutions already. We're in solutions.
yeah, I think so. And by the way, we've got some notes here from a couple of our friends here. Bana Gibb says, "Congrats! Companies like Allen Air Filters are making huge difference in school systems, and they have studies showing that they can purify air quality to remove COVID." Thanks for that comment there, Bana. We really
Definitely.
appreciate that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It goes back to your point there about having, the investment of those
Hmm.
filtration systems. And I don't know much about them, but are they systems that do that in a way when you have one? What's the routine of that? So do you have to keep putting in a new filter system? Does it last for a period of years? All of that kind of thing is something that would have to be considered.
So generally, with the filtration systems, what will happen is like these big giant units that they'll have on the roofs of schools and stuff like that. And the unit itself isn't what needs to be changed regularly. It would be the filters
Yeah.
that they would just need to go and change on a regular basis. So, the maintenance behind that wouldn't be so crazy. But the idea is that if they don't already have these systems installed, that's going to cost a decent amount of money. We're not talking about schools where, it's a municipality where I'm not going to say that the taxpayer dollars are like endless, but they have a pretty big supply of money that's coming in. And if the state doesn't have enough to pay for it, they can get some federal funding to pay for it. And we're talking about our children's lives, and this is something that has to be there, right? So, versus a movie theater where this is going to be coming from a private corporation that's going to have to figure out how they're going to pay for that, right?
Yeah. And what does that do? We were talking about the prices earlier, right? It's $20 to go to a movie theater.
Yeah.
Now, so what does that mean for that going forward? What does that mean? Does it go from 20 to 30? Does it just become so insurmountable for a person to have that experience that it becomes a challenge? Um, I keep thinking about really wild things. So those of you who are following the Surviving Business channel, please bear with us as we talk about solutions that may be unique. But you think about like NBA players that have got these sponsorships on their jerseys and so forth. It might come a time where they might have to think about having movie production companies helping to defray some of the costs of the actual theaters themselves.
Yep.
Having a certain amount of theaters that are this. I know that goes in the face of going back to what we started off where you go to see Rocky over here and ET over here.
Yep.
But there's only a few big media companies, so this might be the Disney theater, or for a period of time, Disney is sponsoring all of the movies that are inside of this theater, and hence that they help to pay for those costs. So you and I want to have this experience, don't want to come in and spend $30, $35. Going $30, $35, that starts, you start to put in your mind, when you start to go above like $20, you
Yep.
start to equate other things that cost 20 something dollars. You start to say, well, is that a great meal that costs 20 something dollars? Is that a cell phone bill that costs $20? You start to doing those kind of things in your head when it happens.
Yeah. So to speak to the price point argument, right? And I think that the price point was already starting to get a little bit out of whack, right? So for the average guy, he takes a girl on a date and he says, "Oh, let's go and catch a movie." That kind of stopped being the idea, right? Because you're like, if we go and see a movie, my night's already like $45. I'm like $45 in the hole already, right?
You're so silly.
Before we've even had a real conversation.
I don't know what do you mean. Like, I don't even know if I want to be in.
I
That's
don't
like
even
date
know
number
you
three. Is
yet.
that what you're saying? It's like date three.
Yeah, it's
Then you go to the movies.
like date number five. Like, hey, I know you and I really like you. Let's go to the movies. You know, when you equate that with a Broadway performance, right? You can go and see a Broadway play for $100,
Yeah.
but to go and see, any movie, it's $25, right? So I got live people in there performing right in front of me, and this is a one-time thing that I'll ever be able to experience. Even if they're going to do another show tonight, and they're going to do another show tomorrow, for this particular sector of time, I'm the only person that gets to see this show the way that it's being acted right now.
I think that's another episode we need to talk about. And
Oh
talking
yeah,
about theatrical, whether they're musicals or theater plays, I think that that's a business that has its own set of challenges. But I do like that thought process. Like, how am I going to handle that? If I go to the if I go to a theater show, I get to talk to you. You right there. Just like, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's go get a beverage. Let's go do that. I'm right there. We can have fun. We can have that. The movie theater is dark. and, and you got, there's stuff going on. It's sound. It's a lot going on. It's not the same kind of thing. And
yeah,
if you do in your mind, it's going to cost almost as much as going to a theater show. You start to
yeah.
balance the daggone amounts between the two.
Yep, if you can get something on sale, and then you got the other side where you have a lot of the forward thinking movie theaters that are out there like Alamo Draft House and even Regal and AMC have realized offering beverages and better kinds of foods, trying to make it more of a dining experience.
Yeah, there's a movie
So
theater grill here in Atlanta that does a good job of that, where you can actually order your food before you go sit down, and then
yeah,
they
yeah. So
bring it.
that's like the Alamo Draft House. You while you're at the movie theater Alamo, the server comes. It's like everything's reserved seating. You don't even have to show a ticket until you sit down, and then the server comes by and they like crouch down under all of the seats because the seats are a little elevated. So they crouch down and they come up and they take your orders, and you can put up a little card and you're ordering throughout the entire movie. At the end of the movie, you done spent like $140 on top of what your movie price was. But it's kind of like if you're short on time, or you just want a real like nice date experience, it's cool. But how many times can you really do that, right?
Yeah, does that help? I mean, it sounds like a once in a blue moon kind of thing. I've done it probably twice in my life, and I go to when movie theaters were a thing. I went to them pretty frequently. Going back to the conversation around screens,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been to right before the pandemic. I went to a movie where they were trying to get you to play a game on your screen, and it was executed very poorly. But it was an ideal that I thought of. Like, how can you incorporate the screen that everybody has in the movie theater into the experience of going to the movie theater? So whether there's a poll, whether you get a snippet of a trailer, whether you get some extra footage, like the end footage that you typically get somewhere, but you've got to
Mm-hmm.
get it through this streaming setup so that way they get you linked in and that kind of thing. That's a way of taking the screens that already exist, and making them less of a distraction because people know they're going to get their thing later on. They're going to get their stuff later on. And you've created another reason for them to actually come because they're going to get some content that's
Mm-hmm.
not that you wouldn't get otherwise.
That's interesting. So you're saying like maybe you're doing like trivia with people are actually answering the question via like a phone app, and then when they're leaving the theater, because they were at the theater and they use your app to order in, they're gonna get like some exclusive content, or they're
Or
gonna get
even a coupon,
or
something to
yeah,
start off with.
coupon.
Yeah, it could be something.
Yeah, when you start talking coupons and you start talking about discounts,
Yeah.
that's when you start getting the ears of people being like, "Oh yeah, I like this." One of the things that I always liked about Regal was that with their point system, I'd go to the movies and all of a sudden, oh shoot, I got like 2 free movie tickets. That means I gotta make it back there again, right? And then that kind of creates a loyalty type of thing. I want to go to Regal every time I go because I got loyalty points, and loyalty points actually pay me something.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing that they were doing, right? But it's like, how do you build on that? I look at it and I say, one of the big solutions, or one of the big things that I really think that they need to do as far as figuring out, how they're going to effectively use their real estate space, is to do something that's completely out of box and that's going to really get their places loaded. And I keep looking at gaming, right? So we were talking the last time that we met, we spoke about GameStop and we spoke about how they need to be more experiential. To me, I look at gaming and I bring up the same point that I brought up during that conversation was kids will sit down in front of YouTube and watch people play video games, right? We have all of these leagues and we have all of these things that are going on where we have uh,
All those places, yeah.
tournaments, where people are playing these games, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they're doing it in, these weird spaces and blah, blah, blah. Where is better situated for you to be able to say, like, we're going to put, these two master gamers playing up against each other, or we're gonna get like the 2K tournament that's airing or whatever, and we're gonna host this, at Regal Cinemas, right? You can buy a ticket to see these dudes play live exclusively at Regal Cinemas, right? And then you're able to like sell fanfare and all this other type of extra stuff. I was reading an article where they kind of mentioned the whole Disney idea that you said, and they kind of touched on the fact that they could do like some of the sports programs that Disney sporting content that Disney has. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea, sporting content that Disney has, but I think they need to take it to the next level, right? Because it's not just the sporting content that Disney has. I think that it's the idea that, let's say, for instance, in a state like, let's say you were in Miami, and Miami in the excuse me, and the Heat's going to the finals, and the Heat is going to be playing their games away, and all of their fans, they want to meet up somewhere and they want to be able to celebrate. They want to be able to buy drinks and have food and be glad, have a great time together. We're showing this at the movie theater. Where's a better place for me to catch this stuff,
Yeah.
right? If there's a big fight, there's a big fight. Like, say for instance, Canelo Alvarez is fighting, XYZ, or Tyson Fury is gonna fight Anthony Joshua. Why wouldn't I find a way where I can say, like, okay, we're gonna sell a seat now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, now there's licensing things, right? Because all these pay per view events, they tend to have like this tremendous amount of money that they want to charge any institution if they want to try and host, the fight, because they figure that's less people that are watching this stuff at home.
And charging you
So
that folks at home, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so like generally, it's like I've heard from people that work at bars that it's like $20 a head or something like that. Blah blah blah. I'm like, for AMC or Regal, you guys can build this straight through, right? And you can say, like, all right, so it's going to be, let's say, for instance, we work out a deal where the pay per view, you guys are going to, instead of getting 20 from the local bar, where they're really going to have way more people in there than what we're really accounting for, what occupancy is or whatever. We're going to say $15. We're going to charge our people $20 to come in, and then so we get $5 off the top. But where you're really going to make the money for AMC or Regal is going to be at concessions, right? And I think that a lot of times what I've seen is that organizations lose money that's waiting for them because they don't plan correctly. I've been to a boxing match or several boxing matches at Barclays out in Brooklyn, and when I'm there, the concessions are pretty much closed. They got some places for you to get a couple of beers, but that's about it, right? And to me, it's like, okay, maybe the place isn't full, but you're losing money at the table because somebody's in there that's hungry. Somebody wants food. A lot of people want food. And a lot of these people that come into the boxing matches, they're willing to spend more money than the people that are going to the basketball games.
Yeah, and there's the undercards and all that kind of thing. I think
Yeah,
this
exactly.
I think this is such a great idea. I really do. Like linking these experiences, I think is so important. You
Yeah,
know,
and yeah, the thing is like not just doing one though, right? Because if you just do one, you become the movie theater that has some people that go there for games, right? You need to be able to figure out how do you bring in not only the people that are going to come for to watch the best Fortniter play against the best Fortniter, this Fortnite tournament and this Madden tournament and this 2K1 tournament, but also if my favorite team is playing in my state, the Jets are playing a game, and I want to be around. I want to go
Jets.
to the sports bar.
We'll watch the Jets, but some people won't be like,
Yeah, some people won't, but I'm just saying I want to go to a sports bar. I don't have to worry about going to a sports bar because it's showing at the theater.
yeah, you're exactly right. That will become an amazing experience because you're right. There are bars in every city associated with every team that exists.
Yep.
And sometimes people have a hard time finding what those bars are, or they may not want to go to a bar.
They may not want to go to a bar. And then and then I think like the other thing is like so we've seen where movie theaters have tried to do this thing where they try to upscale their food a little bit and make their food a little bit better. Um, I think that that may also be something where you think about how do you partner with people that already know how to make food,
Yeah,
right?
there's
And a
great
lot of
chefs everywhere, right? So having a chef event, right, where the chef comes in and they're doing their thing, and you're
yep.
helping to promote that chef, I think is a great way of thinking about it. I did have a thought here that I don't know if they consider. So, for example, in every city, there is some theaters that focus on independent filmmakers or
Hmm.
burgeoning filmmakers. My thought is that at some point, the large theater chains should think about how do we incorporate people who are at some rung of that. So you think about the economic cluster effect, right? So if you're in a city like Los Angeles or New York or Atlanta, where there's a lot of filmmakers, there's a lot of film people around a city like that who are making films like that. So how do those people get integrated into a theater like that? Because when I go, there's one big theater here in Atlanta. Anytime someone's got an independent film and they put it out there, it's packed. Because a lot of times it's people they know that they're inviting to the thing. It's packed. The theater is not a phenomenal. It's not like a super duper 4K, whatever you might want to call it, kind of theater. It's
Hmm.
packed all the time. So how do you think about an event like that where periodically they're supporting a filmmaker? Because the small filmmaker today could be the big filmmaker tomorrow.
Yep.
Using all of the publicity associated with that, getting a packed event, it doesn't dissuade or doesn't hurt the small theater that's doing it because it's just more than one premiere. It's just more premieres. That's all.
Yep.
Because there's lots of filmmakers who can have premieres, and that way you're going and you're having this kind of community angle to it, right? This focus on community, not just what China is making or what Disney's making, but what's being made here or in this place. Like we're going to showcase great New York filmmakers. We're going to showcase great Atlanta filmmakers who are doing this on this date. You need to come out, etc. People are going to come to see that filmmaker. There is no doubt about it.
And I mean, I think that you bring up a great point because when you look at the Netflix studios and you look at Amazon studios and you look at a lot of the movies that those particular um, agencies are producing, um, they are localized. Right? They're finding local talents and they're allowing for those local talents to show what they can do, and they're creating content that's amazing, right? And that's setting those platforms apart from others, right? Now, when we think about streaming services and all, right? So streaming services, that's like the main competitor that's just sitting there ready to just eat the lunch of every movie theater that's out there, right? Take every single client that they can think that they have, that they think that they've ever had, they're gonna be streaming, right? And the ability to stream from your home, I don't have to get it dressed up and go out, blah blah blah. That is that's just a major challenge for them. So when we sit there and we say like, okay, they need to find other ways to get people involved, it's never going to be as easy as to just say like, all right, you know what, we're just going to take some stuff that was on YouTube and we're going to start showing it here. No, that couldn't be the answer, right? The answer has to be, how do you make that into an experience? How do you make that into an event that you can then replicate nationwide across all of your chains, right?
Okay.
That you're able to pull that content. So maybe it is that no longer will the content be available on YouTube. You're going to be able to pay these people a reasonable amount of money to make them say like, okay, well, I ain't gonna post my independent video. I'm gonna actually deal with Regal Cinemas, right? Or are you creating, a tournament based thing?
And
Right?
created a FOMO kind of event, right? We're not asking for them to abdicate their screens forever, but
Right.
periodically they do this, and they do this to support filmmakers in their community. And for one night only, or two nights only, this is what they're doing. That will galvanize people back to what we started the conversation around: a shared experience. That's what makes going to the movies great. It's not really the popcorn and all that. That's the stuff that happens once you get there. But the fact that I'm going to a movie theater with you, like we described in the beginning, we talked about all these movie experiences we had. That is what it is about. Uh, my last comment is really to think about movie theaters expanding the genres of movies that they support. So right now, the independent filmmaker thing made me think about this. Is that right now they're waiting for Disney to make the next thing, right? Because they know they're gonna get paid off of that. They're gonna make a new Star Wars or a new superhero movie, and they're gonna get paid off of that. But when I go other places, like for example, I go to a convention every year in San Diego. Everyone knows what that is. There are people sitting there in line waiting to get into some arbitrary anime thing that no one's ever heard of, that I had never heard of, that the general
Mm-hmm.
population has never heard of. Netflix was super smart by saying we're going to get a piece of that action, and we're going to start to stream a ton of that kind of thing. I think movie theaters got to think about genres that are not ones that are typical ones that people go and see, and that can, think about it. We're in Black History Month right now, right? So what's going on in that month. Just having a month full of that post pandemic. People will go to the movie theaters if they know you're celebrating that all throughout that time, and they know, and you make a publicity kind of thing of it. Really linking it to beyond the genres is just waiting for the next blockbuster to hit, or the next, because that's what they're doing. The money that they're making today, the profit margins on that, it's all coming from like
Yep.
12 movies that are driving all the costs, and they make sure that those movies get sent to China. They've got some actors and they've got some Chinese linkage to them. If you look at a blockbuster, and you will see a Chinese person in any blockbuster. There's no doubt about it, because they've got to send it to China, and so they'll make all of this money off of that thing. But then all these other movies, they'll say, "Nah, you can't do this. You can't. Nah, I don't want you coming because you're not a blockbuster." And hence, people don't get to see those movies until when and if they get on Prime or they get on Netflix or something like that. And even they now have gateways about what they're going to do or not do. But movie theaters, they can kind of flip the script on them and say, hey, we're going to take those genres, especially if they localize them, back to that point, and say, this is what we're doing in Georgia, this is what we're doing in New York, this is what we're doing in North Carolina, this is what we're doing here. And that will galvanize people to come back to them. And in conjunction with all the other stuff we talked about around having an experience around food and all that kind of thing, that's how you can get people to come back. Because my opinion, and I think you feel the same way, is that I like movie theaters. I want that business to survive. It's a good thing. It's a thing like that we invented as far as our country is concerned. We kind of like came. I don't know if we actually invented the film. I don't know all of that, but we're really good at movies.
Yep.
So I want post pandemic for us to all be able to go to movie theaters as much as possible. So this has been a great convo. As always, thank you for those who joined Surviving Business. Episode 2 next week, we're going to do another fantastic conversation. And like I said at the top of the conversation, at the top of this talk, is that if you have a business or you want to start a business, please subscribe and tell us what it is. And every few episodes, we're going to randomly pick somebody, and we're going to have you as another box here in this conversation. And all we're going to do for an hour is talk about you. Is to talk about your business and how the 20, 40 years that we have combined of experience, how they can help you. David has an amazing financial acumen. He's got one of the greatest brains I've ever seen in regards to helping people understand what business is and what their business plan should look like from a financial perspective. I think about things around the people side and how you can make sure you've got the right people in place in order to make sure that you're growing your business the right way. So let us help you by subscribing and telling us what you do. And we're going to keep somewhat of a surprise about the next episode. But if you subscribe and send us a link and send us an email, you can send us an email at wdconsultteam@gmail.com. So that's wdconsult, then team, so there's 2 T's in there, team@gmail.com, and tell us that. We'll kind of give you a heads up about it. So David, any final words for the audience today on episode number 2 of SB?
My final words would be, like what you said, I don't want to see movie theaters go goodbye. But I didn't want to see CDs go goodbye. I didn't want to see my tapes go goodbye, VHS go goodbye. I didn't want to see Abraham and Strauss and Sears and all of those other companies fail.
You going back?
I'm just saying that with business, if you don't do what you have to do, it goes goodbye. So I'm hoping that for movie theaters they find some way to exist, and hopefully some of the suggestions that we make, they can take some of them, they can utilize them. This is free for them. If someone out there in the space can get the word to AMC and Regal and even the small providers that are out there, because even some of the small shops, mom and pop shops, I think that they can really try and use some of these ideas to invigorate their business if they're able to make it through COVID.
That's right. So even if you are not a movie theater, we're hoping that you heard something that makes you think more broadly or more widely about your business and what your business can mean or what you can do. Because we are focused on making sure that you survive. The product that you created, the service that you created it because you know that it would have value to people. So why not give it a chance to survive? So this is Winston Wilson.
David Wilson.
And we are the team here at Surviving Business. We look forward to having you in our next episode. You all have a great day. Stay blessed, stay safe, wear your mask, social distance, and take care of each other. Take care.